market dynamics are telling me that there's 7 playoff teams in the NFC and there's 8 teams favored to make the playoffs at MGM. So I'm definitely not going to bet the Rams to make the playoffs because I feel like I'm, betting into a bad situation there. You want to say that they can win the division? I think that is an argument that I'd listen to. But what did we just, like, if you're just tuning in, we just did a whole 15 minutes on why we think the Niners are going to have a great year. So if I'm bullish on the Niners, and I'm very bullish on the Niners for other reasons besides roster, I think their schedule is the big reason why. I think it's hard for me to also be bullish on on the Rams, because it's like, well, they face each other twice and only one of them can win the division. So am I cutting off my nose despite my face to have a positive opinion on both NFC West contenders? And if you look at the Rams schedule, they're favored that game week 1 against Houston. I think they win that game. I don't really love Houston. I think they win at Tennessee week 2. And then they get Philly in week 3. And that's really the game that, we'll find out how good this Rams team is. I think it's good that game comes early because it's on the road and it's outdoors. And September in Philly is much better than January, which we saw. I forget if there was bad weather in that divisional game, but
yeah, there was.
The Rams did give, I think it was snow and wind, right? Mm-hmm. Philly in January. The Rams gave them the toughest game of anyone in the playoff. So that's encouraging that they can maybe hang against Philly in that game. But again, it's on the road, it's outdoors, it's early in the year. We'll see if the offense comes together quick enough, right? I love the Devontae Adams signing just like you do, but it takes time for a quarterback and receiver to build the kind of connection that Stafford had with Cooper Kupp. So I'm definitely not betting an under on the Rams. Like, I love Stafford. I think he's fantastic. I think Stafford and McVay, like, if you close your eyes and say, all right, you got to pick one quarterback, head coach, one game for all the marbles, who you picking? I think Stafford and McVay probably pretty high on that list, maybe in the top 5, maybe in the top 3. But I think over the long haul of the season, you're worried about the injuries with Stafford. You're worried about, the fact that they play in a division with a team that I think is better than them roster-wise, top to bottom. But I was very encouraged by Chris Shula and that defense last year. Very good. If that defense keeps improving, we might be talking more about the Rams defense than we are their offense come the second half of the year, because I think that's how you get Stafford across the finish line.
Jared, we weren't talking about it enough. Last season, the Rams in 3 of their 4 final regular season games held their opponents to fewer than 10 points. They played the Niners in week 15, held them to 6. They played the Jets in week 16, held them to 9. They played Arizona in week 17, held them to 9. And then they played Seattle in week 18, and lost 30-25. Garoppolo played in the game. It was just one of those. They already had the playoffs locked up, so they didn't need to do anything. And then they played Minnesota in the wild card round and only gave up 9 points. So you could essentially say 4 straight games where the Rams were trying. They had all their starters out there. They didn't give up double digits in any of those games, and they go on the road and play Philly and give up 28 in that one. Wow. So, to your point, man, Shula had those guys playing unbelievable. As those young guys got more comfortable, got more experience, they were terrific down the stretch. So I think the Rams defense is going to be a really strong unit this year. I think when you're dealing with the Rams, Jared, this is a team I would only look big picture with them. I would look at them to win the NFC. I would look at them maybe to win the Super Bowl potentially. It's one of those teams that they're really relying on like a few guys, right? And they're older guys, and if they lose them, it could get bad fast. So obviously if Stafford gets injured, they're going to be in a tough spot. Puka is one of my favorite players in the league. He's so physical, but just it feels like every time Puka catches the ball, you're worried about him getting hurt and just, hurting himself. Devontae Adams is obviously getting up there in age. So the Rams are one of those teams, it just feels like at just like any point, there's danger lurking. And it's a team I'm afraid to bet anything regular season-wise, because obviously the regular season, it's a grind, man, and you got to withstand injuries, and it's a team that nobody wants to see when they get in the postseason, but can they get to the postseason? That's the question with the Rams, and that's why it's a team where I would only look big picture with them. You just brought up a great point. Stafford McVay, that's a pretty darn good quarterback-head coach combo. You got to win a game. Those guys are a pretty good option. Obviously, their first year together, they win the Super Bowl. And then, they're in the playoffs. They go into Detroit, and that was a great game, 2-point game that they lose. Then this past year, they play Minnesota, a 14-win team, dealing with all the distractions of the fires that were going on in California. Yep. They have to move the game to Phoenix, and they blow them out. I mean, they look like the 14-win team. And then to your point, they play the best team in football last season, a team that just ran through the playoffs. And the one game that was close, Rams were driving. They were in the red zone. Had they scored a touchdown, they win that game. An LA Dome team traveling across country to play the Eagles in weather that the Eagles want to play in, and the Rams almost beat them in that stuff. So it just unbelievable by the Rams, what they're able to do in these playoff one-and-done type games. It's a team that nobody wants to see, and that's why I would rather just bet them to win the NFC or win the Super Bowl. I don't know if it's a team I want to mess around with the win total, miss playoffs, any of those kind of things. It reminds me of like the Ravens teams with Joe Flacco, Jared, where you never quite knew what you were going to get out of them in the regular season, but when Flacco got to the playoffs, he was as good as anybody. Or same thing with Eli and the Giants and those teams. We never knew what Eli would look like in the regular season. We didn't know if the Giants would get to the playoffs, but when they did, I mean, they would be a tough out every time they would get to the postseason. I feel the same way about the Rams. So that's how I would go about the Rams. I think if you're going to bet somebody in this division, I think it'd be San Francisco or Seattle, who you were talking about earlier. But big picture, I like the Rams, to be honest with you, as any team in the NFC, especially at the price that you're getting.
Yeah, and again, they're probably going to start 2-0. So you get a couple wins under your belt early. And then really that game against the Eagles, if they beat Philly, what's the other NFC team that they have to jump over to prove that they're the best? Like, the NFC is wide open this year. Like I said, MGM's got 8 teams favored to make the playoffs in the NFC. Only 7 are making it. So it's a wide open conference this year. Even San Francisco and Philly, who I think deserve to be the favorites for different reasons. Philly roster, San Francisco schedule, maybe a little pedigree with the coach. But outside of that, if the Rams go into Philly week 3 and win that game, who's to say they don't deserve to be the NFC favorites after week 3? They start 3-0 with a win over the Super Bowl champs. So there's definitely a case to be made. I don't know what their number is to win the NFC. I'm assuming it's lower than the Niners.
Yeah,
definitely
9-1.
Lower than the Eagles.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you get a certain point. So like Eagles, Lions, Niners, Rams. So the 4th favorite to win the NFC.
Yep.
If they start 3-0 with a win over the Eagles, why are they not 5-1? So to me, that's where I base my, all right, I want to make a bet on a futures market early. I want that early schedule to be very favorable, or I want an opportunity to make up some serious ground with a big-time game early in the year. I would say the Rams have both. They have 2 cupcakes. I don't want to call Houston a cupcake, but I think they win that game at home week 1. And then definitely Tennessee's a cupcake. And then you get Philly. And then the sandwich spot is Indy at home, which you would think is a game that they should win. But then they play San Francisco week 5 on a short week. Now, they do get the home game there. But let's be honest, San Francisco to LA, it's not exactly a big travel situation. So the travel for San Fran's very minimal in that spot. And if I recall, Shanahan and McVay, it's been a very one-sided rivalry over the years.
Yes, it has.
It's been very one-sided. But that's another really tricky game for the Rams. So I think, and then they play Baltimore after that. Now, they do get extra rest, and then they got to go to London. Like, the Rams have a very, very, I would call it high, low first 7 weeks. I mean, again, I think they're going to start 2-0. Let's say they're 2-1 after the game at Philly. And then let's say the Colts is a bad look-ahead spot and they drop that game to Indy. Man, now all of a sudden they're 2-2 with the Niners coming to town. And if you don't win that game, you got to go to Baltimore next week. So the season could go very off the rails or, lightning, stratospheric highs or terrible lows very early on. I mean, you're talking about roller coaster with those first 7 games. So how they handle that's going to be very intriguing.